Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Imagine something supposedly there to protect you, right?
Yeah.
But it's built as much on myths as it is on actual science.
Yeah.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into the really fascinating, complex world of date rape drugs.
Yeah.
And, not just the chemicals, but how we talk about them, the fears they stir up.
Exactly. And what's really interesting looking at the source materials, how our whole understanding of these drugs isn't just chemistry. It's more like a mix, what the research calls hybrid risk knowledge.
Hybrid risk knowledges.
Okay. Yeah, and this ties into something called the chronotope. It sounds fancy, but it's basically just, a specific time and place where we expect these dangers to exist.
Right.
So our mission for you today is really to dig into how these ideas shape what we think the risks actually are.
Okay, that chronotope idea.
Yeah.
That really jumped out at me. This notion that the danger isn't just like in the substance itself,
Right.
but it's tied to a very specific scene, a particular time and place where we think it happens.
Precisely. And the article points to a main one for date rape drugs. Think clubs, raves, big youth parties, usually late at night.
Okay, yeah, that makes intuitive sense, I guess.
But the assumption is it doesn't happen in, say, a coffee shop or a doctor's office. And the source brings up this striking case in Toronto where a rapist used halcyon, a legal tranquilizer, but it got very little media buzz.
Because it didn't fit the script. Didn't happen in that chronotope.
Exactly. It didn't fit the expected picture.
Wow. Okay, that reminds me of that Y2K example you mentioned earlier.
Sure.
The Toronto Sun headline.
Oh, yeah.
Women warned of drudge booze. And they mention ecstasy. But wait, the sources are clear. Ecstasy is an upper, right? Not a sedative.
That's right. Generally associated with empathy, not incapacitation in that way.
So how does that happen? How does something so kind of factually off get so much traction?
Well, it goes back to that hybrid knowledge idea. The source explains that information gets presented in these mixed formats.
Like what?
You get scientific bits, maybe charts, but then also war on drugs type visuals, scary images, dramatic stories, almost like Reefer Madness is Panic.
Okay. So it's a mix of fact, fear, and, trauma.
Yeah, a potent blend that really shapes perception, even if it's confusing or contradictory sometimes.
Okay, so we've talked about where the risk is perceived. What about who? The sources mentioned something about gender, right?
Yes.
But it sounded complicated.
Yeah, it is. There are mixed messages. So the text might talk neutrally about students or youth.
Okay.
But then you look at the pictures they use.
Mm-hmm.
Overwhelmingly, it's a very traditional setup. Young, white woman looking vulnerable, maybe a shadowy male figure.
Or that hand slipping something into a drink.
Exactly that image. And this connects to another point the source makes, how the drug itself sometimes becomes the villain.
What do you mean?
Well, think about phrases like the perfect crime in a pill. Oprah even used that about GHB, apparently.
Huh.
When you frame it like that, the source argues, the focus shifts from the person, the assailant, to the substance. It sort of subtly degenders the attacker and the actual intent to assault.
So by focusing so much on the drug, we might actually be obscuring the real issue of assault itself.
That seems to be the implication, yeah. And because the drugs are seen as messing with your ability to think clearly, to calculate risk,
Right.
the responsibility for safety kind of shifts. The research notes it often falls onto trusted friends.
The buddy system.
Pretty much. And implicitly, it's almost always female friends. It draws on existing women's friendship networks for protection.
So that's where all that advice comes from. Like, never leave your drink. Watch your friends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Never go to a bar alone. Intervene if someone seems off. Only take drinks from the bartender or someone you really trust. It's all about collective vigilance. Though the source does point out that the feminist roots of that kind of collective care often get forgotten or ignored in these mainstream warnings.
Interesting. So, okay, wrapping this up. This whole date rape drug narrative is, wow, it's really complex. It's this weave of actual facts, cultural fears, media stories. It's not just about the chemicals. It's about where we think the danger is,
Yeah.
when it happens, and how we're told about it.
Absolutely. And the source leaves us with, well, a pretty provocative final thought to consider.
Oh.
In all this talk about risk managing risk, calculating risk, warning about risk, there's one huge element of these situations that almost never gets mentioned. Pleasure. People go to parties, they drink, they dance, they might look for intimacy. They do these things for enjoyment, for fun, for connection, not just to navigate a field of dangers.
Right, it gets completely lost sometimes.
Completely. So the source suggests maybe a real understanding of risk in these spaces also needs to make room for talking about, well, pleasure. this ubiquitous thing that drives people to be there in the first place, but which doesn't really fit into our neat risk calculations.